Welcome. Today we have Montana State University Bozeman campus. So it's located in Bozeman, Montana, USA. It offers undergraduate, graduate, and doctorate program. We have with us Ms. Q Wo. Q, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Q is an international student recruiter. To give a little bit of profile of Q, Q is responsible for international student enrollment growth at Montana State University, to developing and is executing recruitment strategies. She works closely with educational partners and students to introduce MSU and assisting their students during the application process. Serving as an international student recruiter, she is excited to help connect Montana State University with more international students around the world. And she is going to take a very important topic which can influence all of us, which is how do foreign universities select international students for admission purpose? How do foreign universities look at what do the foreign university admission officers look in international student application packet? So Q, the entire present, the floor is for you. Please take it over. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Richard. I will start sharing my screen. So thank you so much, Richard, for having me today and to talk about a very important topic to international students. It's about how do foreign universities select international students for admission. So I know the word foreign university include, university in other countries too, but I'm coming from a US institution, so a lot of information I present today will be more relevant to, US institutions. So Bridget already give an introduction about myself, so I will skip this part. So let's first talk about undergraduate admission. So in this presentation, we'll talk about undergraduate admission first, and then we'll talk about graduate admission. So for undergraduate admission, what do US university looking for? So I think you might be very familiar with all of these terms if you have already started to do some research about applying for a US institution. First of all is your GPA or cumulative GPA. So GPA is an abbreviation for grade point average. And some students ask me, so where is my GPA? How can I find out about that? It's actually reflected in your transcript. So it depends on what where you're from. So I guess for most of you here, you're from India. And so for undergraduate, we will look into your examination result. Some university will look at your year 10 and year 12 result. Some university will look at your year 10, 11, and 12 examination result. We understand that the grading scale in India is very different from the US grading scale, and no worries about that. Some universities, we do have a team, an evaluation admission team that our job is to convert the GPA from a foreign institution, a foreign high school to a US grading scale. So we know, okay, with your GPA in India, how much is it equivalent to the grading scale in US, which is our 4. Some institution, some university, they will not have this service, so they will require you to send it to a third-party evaluation company, for example, like ACE or West, and they will do this kind of job before they send a result to the school to make a decision. So check with the university and see if they offer this type of service, because usually if you send to a third-party evaluation company, there will be additional cost for you. Then the other factor, which is very important, is your proof of English proficiency. This is required for most international students. The common English test score we require is IELTS or TOEFL, but some universities also accept other English tests as well. For example, Pearson test, Duolingo. So check with the university website and see what English test do they accept. At my university, we also accept a lot of other English tests as well. For example, we also accept English free, ITAP. If you have a graduate from an institution in an English-speaking country like the US and Canada, for example, then we also have an exemption policy that we will not require proof of English proficiency in such cases. or students coming from a native English speaking countries. For example, if students coming from a citizen of Canada or Australia, they went to school there their whole life, then we don't require proof of English proficiency. The other thing I want to mention in this one is that conditional admission. So what is conditional admission and how is it relevant to the discussion of proof of English proficiency? So conditional admission means that you meet our academic requirement, meaning your GPA meets our requirement, minimum requirement, but you don't have English proficiency, or you want to spend some time before you enter into a degree seeking program to improve your English. In such cases, we can process your application for conditional admission, meaning you would take intensive English program for a certain period of time before you enter a degree seeking program. So in that case, we don't require proof of English proficiency from you. Instead, if you finish the intensive English program successfully, then that is equivalent to proof of English proficiency for us. What are the factors that university are looking for? So the first two factors I mentioned in the previous slide is like the very important. Every university asks for that. You have to provide that. The factors that I am mentioning in this slide could be optional for some university. Okay, so SAT and ACT. There has been a major change with SAT and ACT requirement in past year because of COVID. In the past, some universities require you to have SAT or ACT. Some require a minimum score, some don't require a minimum score. When COVID happened and a lot of students couldn't take SAT or ACT, then a lot of universities decided not to require SAT or ACT anymore. And they don't, for example, at our university, we don't require SAT or ACT, and that's not part of the admission or scholarship consideration at all. So it doesn't matter if you have SAT or ACT, that's great, but it won't make you more, at least for our university, it will not make your case stronger than another student who don't have SAT or ACT, just because we want it to be fair for every student, because we don't require SAT or ACT. Personal statement is basically a letter saying or stating that why are you interested in our university? What makes you a strong candidate? Recommendation letter is ideally it should be, and actually it should be from a professional context, for example, your high school teacher, or if you have spent a few years in a university, it should be your professor at a university. Some university, they want to know you a little bit better, and then they will have an interview with you to understand you better and have a more like a verbal communication with you rather than just reading, understand you only from the paper. So these are optional. However, some university will make this as a requirement. So make sure you check with the university and see, if they list it in the website, it is required. If they don't, it's not required. I would say some university having a personal statement, a recommendation letter, and already have an interview. Usually it's like a competitive program or competitive university. So they're looking for something beyond your GPA. So it doesn't hurt to have these documents ready. Or for example, some university will use personal statement, recommendation letter, or interview to to consider that as part of the consideration for their admission or scholarship decision. One thing I want to mention is that for competitive university or programs, meaning the minimum requirement listed on the website does not guarantee admission. So maybe you see that your GPA is really high, but you still don't receive an admission offer from the university. It doesn't mean that you are not a good student or anything at all. It just means that they are very competitive university or competitive program, and they have a lot of other candidates who have an even stronger profile. So that's one of the reasons why. And then some university will have a holistic admission approach when they consider, many factors beyond GPA and test score to make a decision. Like I mentioned earlier, for example, in the case that you are a borderline student with a very borderline GPA, if you have a personal statement, recommendation letter, or something like that, they may look into your application package holistically and see if they want to make an exception for you, for example, because they want to see everything as a whole and not just GPA. So every university will have a slightly different approach. Some will just look at your GPA. If you don't meet it, you don't get it. But some will want to look in your profile as a whole and more comprehensively. So that is for undergraduate. For graduate, it's very similar with some additional factors, but similarly, university will look into your GPA. Again, this is reflected in your college transcript. They will also ask for proof of English proficiency. It's the same for undergraduate. So the first 2 points is no different on undergraduate. GRE and GMAT. So I'm sure you're familiar with these terms, but just a quick reminder, GMAT is kind of like a standardized test for any students who apply for a business program, and GRE is a standardized test for any students who take a non-business program. Some universities will require this GRE or GMAT, some don't. And remember, like a lot of universities, they will have decentralized admission, meaning that the department will make a decision on what documents they want, what is the requirement they are looking that they have. So every department will have slightly different requirement for GMAT or GRE. Some even don't require, or some require with no minimum score. So if you're applying for a graduate program, it's super important that you check with the department's website. Personal statement, recommendation letter are the 2 documents that it's almost required for every, I would say, every graduate program or every graduate school I used to work with, they always require personal statement and recommendation letter. It's unlike undergraduate that it could be optional, but for graduate, this is part of the requirement. And for recommendation letters, usually they require free, and it should come from a professional contact. Like I mentioned earlier, it could be your professor, or if you have working experience, it could be from your employer, and resume as well. This is what I mentioned earlier. A lot of graduate school, they have graduate programs at university, they have decentralized. So make sure you check the requirements from the department to know exactly what they're looking for. Other factors when you apply for a graduate program. So it really depends on what you apply for. What major are you applying for? Some major would require you, some program will require you to have additional documents. For example, if you apply for a graduate program in architecture, you will have to provide a portfolio. If you apply for like a music programs or dancing, whatever, more like an art side, you will have to have like an audition or portfolio. If you are like doing architecture, like I mentioned earlier, or some kind of like art related program, some programs they would require you to have an interview. Or if you're applying for like an English or literature program, they would require you to have a writing sample. Again, graduate is also very competitive. So meeting the minimum requirement does not guarantee admission. If you are looking for assistantship, be proactive. A lot of students asking me, come to me and ask like, how can I do to get assistantship? The key word here is be proactive. There's really no standard of like how. It's not like you use your GPA only to determine whether you get assistantship or not. The decision is solely based on the department. And the best way is to approach the department. And for example, if you are looking for a research assistantship, you better know in your mind already, like what kind of research that are you interested in, and then go to see what, like check the faculty's profile, see what kind of research they are doing, and see if any of them doing any research that's similar to the area of research that you are interested in, and reach out to that faculty member directly and say, hey, my name is so-and-so. I'm interested in doing this research. I see that you are also doing this kind of research, and basically introduce yourself and kind of like be proactive and let them know why they should consider you for assistantship. Don't just send very general question like, hey, my name is and I want assistantship. You very unlikely that you will get a response for that, because it doesn't say that you are genuinely or care much about getting assistantship. So make sure that you could do the extra mile. So admission to the US university, there are different types of admission. There's full admission, conditional admission, and provisional admission. So remember that these terms that I'm using here is just, it's based on, I'm using my institution as an example. And these are the terms we use at our institution, and other universities may have different terms that they use, okay? So full admission meaning that you meet all of the requirements, GPA, English requirement. However, sometimes students, if they have not provided official documents for attendance, some university will require you to provide official documents before they can give you a full admission. But for some university like ours, we can give you full admission even though you haven't provided an official document. Having said that, you still have to provide official document prior your enrollment to MSU. Conditional admission is what I mentioned earlier. It's when you meet our academic requirement, but you don't meet our English requirement. In that case, we will issue a conditional admission offer for you. Provisional admission or admit on probation, meaning that you have a very borderline GPA and we want to give you a chance to give it a try when you come to the university. So in that case, if you are admitted on provision or on probation, we will have that more recorded in our system, so we know that we have to pay more attention to you. So these are the terms that the admission types that we have at least as an example at our institution. So other factors to consider. This is about like documents. When you send application, understand this will help you a lot when you apply to our universities. Official and unofficial transcripts. Sometimes students don't understand, and they send a document via email to us and say, hey, here's my official documents. Please know that any document sent via email from a student to us is unofficial, which is fine. For us to process the application, we can use that to make an admission decision, but it is not official documents. And we still require official documents prior to student arrival and enrollment to the university. Okay, so how can I send official documents? Official documents must be sent directly from your institution to our student institution in the US or whatever country you're applying for. Anything sent by email is unofficial. So official documents could be sent via mail, and it could, like I said, from the institution from your home country to the university in the US, or some institution they have like an electronic system that they can send the documents securely digitally. So either way that would work. But if they send via email, or if the students send it to us via email, none of that is considered as official. If your documents is not in English, make sure it's translated by a certified translator. Like I mentioned earlier, some institutions would require the transcript to be evaluated by a third-party evaluation company like ECE or West before they make a decision. And a lot of the institutions will require you to have an application fee payment. This varies, the cost varies from $35 to $100 or sometimes a little bit even more, but that range I'm giving here is very popular range. So that was like an overview of what we are looking for. I'm just going to give you some example of what we are looking for here at MSU. So for example, for undergraduate, our GPA requirement for freshmen is 2.5. If you are a transfer student, meaning you have taken a year or so at a university and you want to transfer to a university in the US, for example, then we require GPA 2.0. English requirement is the same for both freshman and transfer. The only difference is that if you transfer from a US institution to another US institution and you have taken 2 English courses with a C or above, then we don't require you. Actually, we don't, but we will treat that as meeting our English requirement. Like I said, we accept a lot of English tests, TOEFL, IELTS, but we understand that because of COVID, a lot of students cannot go to the testing center. And so we also accept online testing options like Duolingo, ITAP, English Free, or TOEFL Home Edition. Yeah, so in terms of process, we have a very straightforward and simple process. We have an online application fee is $38. You can send unofficial documents by email to us to make so that we can do evaluation and make a decision. But like I mentioned earlier, every student needs to provide official documents prior enrollment to the university. So if you are admitted, we will send you an offer letter and we'll ask you to provide us bank statement, financial certificate, and copy of your passport so we can issue an I-20 for you, which is a document that you will need to apply for a visa. For graduate admission, this is another example from MSU. The GPA requirement is 3.0. I don't see any other programs at MSU that have a lower GPA than 3.0. They are more strict with English and they only accept TOEFL, IELTS, or Pearson test. They don't accept other tests. GRE, like I mentioned earlier, it varies by department. So you make sure that you check with the department directly. Personal statement, recommendation letters are also required for if you apply for a graduate program at MSU as well. The process is very similar. For undergraduate, you can send us document to our email address, but for graduate, we have a portal that you can go then upload your documents. The application fee is $60, and the other requirements very similar. Like I mentioned, proof of English proficiency, essay, free recommendation letters, GRE or GMAT, we depend on the department. And the rest of the step is the same. If you admitted, we'll contact you for financial documents to issue an I-20 for you. Please note that for graduate admission, it takes longer to process the application than undergraduate. And so you have to plan ahead of time, apply as early as you can. The deadline I'm showing you here on the table, it's just an estimation, and sometimes the department may take a little bit longer. In average at our university, it takes roughly about 2 months to make a decision. Sometimes it is less than that, sometimes it's more, but that's just to give you an idea how long it takes for graduate admission. So make sure that you apply ahead of time. I have to make a pause here and ask Richard that should I keep going with the introduction about MSU, or should I leave it open for question first before I?
Thank you for that wonderful presentation. You know, a couple of questions have just come. If you could answer that. One is basically in this COVID-19, if the department, this is from a graduate student, if the department is closed, how do we correspond with the department regarding the admission status? Is it through email, and or if there are any way to reach out to them by phone?
Yeah, even during COVID, I don't think we are closed. We just shift our working model from, it depends on the university, but from like working in the office to working remotely. But either way, it shouldn't affect our accessibility for students. So you still can email the department, or you can give them a phone call. Either would work.
And the second question is again from a graduate student. He just wants to know, basically, you have mentioned that for assistantship, you need to reach out to the department directly. Should I do it in my first year itself? And should I again reach out by email and by reaching out them directly? Any tips on that? Yeah,
as a start, initiating a conversation by email would be best, because that would be the best way for you to give more information about you, because sometimes it's hard to call the department directly and not sure if they're ready to have a conversation with you that could last for like 20-30 minutes. So And with email, you can attach documents that can support for your case. So make sure you do research. My keywords for any student who want to do assistantship is that know what you are asking for and know the institution, reach out, be proactive, and be ready to impress yourself with the department or with the faculty member. Don't do anything like, hi, my name is, I want a assistantship. That will never ever happen. And you may not receive any response from us. So
thank you, Wu, for the wonderful presentation.